What's up, guys? It's Michael Matt here. Today we're going to be reacting to another part of Ashes of Creation by Kira. The video's title is "The Ashes of Creation situation just got much crazier." The thumbnail's fucking crazy too, man. The link will be down in the description below. If you want to watch the original video, I do recommend it. And I guess let's get into this.
Okay, well, friendos, welcome back. As you can see in front of me, the Steven Sharif files. This is the lawsuit of Steven versus the board, the shadow board, right? That nobody knew existed until, at least internally to the company, in November of 2025. These have been around since 2024 as a board officially. And obviously at this point, we basically have a bunch of sides of this story, apart from Steven's side and some other investors and stuff that, you know, may or may not come out at some point. But we've had the employee side where they were obviously notified that the company was basically fucked. And they've also filed their own lawsuit because they're owed wages that have not been paid and PTO and severance and things like that for the wrongful dismissal under the WARN Act in California. And then we also have Robert Dawson's side in a way through his TFE game.
Also, sorry if I sound a little off today. I'm slightly sick. So, throat feels a bit funny.
Holdings Company is a lawsuit in Nevada State Court against Steven Sharif, which alleges that Steven and his husband embezzled tens of millions of dollars from the company. And then, of course, we have Jason Karamanis, who has been in.
I have still yet to see proof that they've embezzled any money. I've seen people report on it and label it like that, but there's still no proof. Until proof is provided, it's just statements, accusations, with no concrete evidence.
Investor in the company since, you know, like 10 years ago or something, where he's released a bunch of text messages and made a bunch of claims that he has evidence that's going to come out eventually that shows that Steven Sharif has done X, Y, and Z. And there are a bunch of videos going over these allegations and things that have been made public. This is the first time we've seen Steven's side of the story, and this is a lawsuit with 52 pages that has been filed in the federal court, Southern District of California. I'm going to go over this in its entirety.
52 pages, damn.
Certain sections that just give you like background information that we already know, like who is Steven, you know, what is the video game, stuff that nobody really cares about. And obviously there are going to be videos that pop up after this and probably mainstream game articles that go over just the broad bullet points. Some of the bullet points I can give you straight away is that if any of this is proven true, it's fucking nuts. I've been saying this the whole time. I've been saying since day one. Once all the sides of the story of this come out, you're going to see some insane claims. There's obviously already crazy claims in the public, but some of the crazy claims that are in here are that the board essentially used coercion and threats of physical violence to take over the company in order to profit wholly from the company and essentially kick Steven out. And
that, I want to say I doubt that happened. Because if evidence come out of that about that, that is a lot more damning. And I think that'd be more than a lawsuit. I think that's like criminal charges.
And take control completely. And there's some crazy shit in here. So yeah, let's begin. The lawsuit seeks to stop Intrepid's rogue board of directors from intentionally destroying the company, including through layoffs of nearly its entire workforce. Through manufactured crisis and through bad faith foreclosures on secured loans, the board defendants intentionally sabotage Intrepid to steal its assets, including its most valuable assets, which is the video game. The video game was developed under the leadership...
Purposely sabotaging, I could see that. Because it's possible that the board, even like the board that got in that they formed, the board probably seen like, oh, this probably isn't going to be profitable, so let's tank this, get the studio shut down, and then sell off the assets and make a profit. It wouldn't be the first time like that's happened. But again, there's no proof of that unless they got some proof here. So it's just a theory, a possibility, you know? My avatar's eyes are closing. My eyes are still open. I'm just like always squinting. So the camera always thinks my eyes are closed. I'm going to try to have to figure out how to fix that.
of plaintiff Stephen Sharif, shareholder in Intrepid, visionary founder, creator of MMORPG Ashes of Creation. Stephen has dedicated more than a decade to developing Ashes of Creation, including its world, lore, gameplay systems, etc. The gaming community has been anxiously anticipating the full release of Ashes of Creation for years. Yeah, it's been a long time, and I'm sure some people have been very anxious. Defendants well understood that the success or failure of Ashes of Creation will be exceedingly public and personal to Stephen. They also understood that its success would be exceedingly profitable. The board defendants took steps to ensure they alone profited from that success at the expense of Stephen, derivative plaintiffs, which are unnamed, and Intrepid as a company. Beginning in 2024, defendant Rob Dawson, Intrepid's principal lender, embarked on a campaign to extort control of Intrepid from plaintiff and ultimately to strip Intrepid of its assets, including groundbreaking intellectual property and trade secrets, aka the game, for Dawson's own use and financial gain. Through repeated threats to withhold funding for payroll, to shut Intrepid down, to financially ruin plaintiff, and even physically harm plaintiff, Dawson, and then there's a redacted section here, it's like the fucking Epstein files. Again, this
if they got evidence of this shit, this would be very damning. Like, extremely.
Video will probably be called the Stephen Files.
Threats of violence is, if I'm not mistaken, a crime. I don't think it holds a like very long time. Like for if they send you to prison for it, like I don't think you go for a very long time. I think at most, I think the max sentence I want to say. Let's see, it's it's 5 years. I'm gonna pull it up on my right here. California. What is the max you can be sentenced for threatening someone's life? And I think you said it's in California, so I'm going to type in California. In California, threatening someone's life, criminal threats, penal code 422, is a wobbler offense, punishable as a misdemeanor or a felony. So it could be either, I guess. A felony conviction, often deemed a strike, carries a maximum of 3 to 4 years in state prison, with an additional 1 year if a deadly weapon is used. Under the 3 strikes law, a third strike can lead to 25 years to life. Well, I'm going to assume this is like, if this is true, this is his first offense. So he could be looking at like about 3 years in prison if like they get him on felony charges. Or they might charge him with a misdemeanor, which probably be like community service and fines, I'd assume.
Rob elected himself to board, cherry-picked additional board members who would then do his bidding. Those board members are defendants Ryan Ogden, who is also duly appointed Chief Financial Officer, Teresa Fett, Aaron Bartels, collectively with Dawson, now referred to as board defendants. The board defendants failed to fulfill their fiduciary duties to the company. Instead, they engineered and executed a plan to strip Intrepid of its assets and transfer those assets to a Dawson-created and controlled entity called TFE Game Holdings, which, again, is the company that internally employees have seen evidence.
It's kind of funny if you really think about it. TFE Game Holdings. Game Holdings. I'm like, that, what a title. And like, if that's true, like trying to steal assets, that's fucked. Game holding. They're trying to game hold your assets.
And this has been reported in multiple videos, my own included, that TFE was going to be the company that took control of Intrepid and all of it.
If this goes to trial, depending on how long it takes, we could see Ashes of Creation. I would say return, maybe. It would depend on the lawsuit and if the company pays out to the people needed. The guy could take back over, get the rights back to the game, and resume production of the game. Maybe. That is a very small maybe. Or he might just... again, this might be like years of legal battle. So by the end of it, odds are, though, I would say he's probably going to be burnt out and just like, don't want nothing to do with this anymore. And I wouldn't blame the dude for a second. You'd probably get sick of hearing about Ashes of Creation if you have to listen to it for 3 years in a courtroom.
Its assets, and this was in plan from at least December of 2025. And then the lawsuit also alleges that these board members are likely also members of that company, and they were planning to misappropriate and claim ownership over Intrepid's intellectual property, trade secrets, and other assets, which is essentially the video game, right? It's the only valuable thing that Intrepid owns. That's what everyone's fighting over is the video game's intellectual property and the ability to create or sell the video game. The plan also included, among other things, deliberately starving Intrepid of cash to manufacture justification for a foreclosure by TFE, attempting to divert revenues owed to Intrepid's accounts controlled by TFE and Dawson, and attempting to execute a wrongful Article 9 foreclosure in favor of TFE's junior secured lien without notice to senior secured creditors. This is the bank, right? You can look this up publicly. I've talked about it in other videos. This is the bank's lien that was secured in 2020 and expired in December of 2025, which, as you'll notice, is a very coincidental, you might say, time frame, right? If the secured lien, if that needs to be paid in December of 2025,
it's gonna be awkward. I'm not sure if I'm probably gonna rewind for a second because I'm not clear if I understand what he just said.
Deliberately starving Intrepid of cash to manufacture justification for a foreclosure by TFE, attempting to divert revenues owed to Intrepid's accounts controlled by TFE and Dawson, and attempting to execute a wrongful Article 9 foreclosure in favor of TFE's junior secured lien without notice to senior secured creditors. This is the bank.
That shit. That's fucked up.
Right? You can look this up publicly. I've talked about it in other videos.
Okay. Secured lien without notice to senior secured creditors. Okay. I'm not a very smart man, especially when it comes to like banks and stuff like that. But that don't sound good. That sounds like multiple people went into this loan. Sorry. Multiple people went into this loan. If I had to assume that's the case, and what they're trying to do is close it without notifying. Which could be like, if that's the case, I'm like, that would be like a deal of like they're trying to fuck you, they're trying to take the money and run and leave you fucked with the bank, so therefore they can cash out. Sorry, if my avatar's moving around, I noticed a tick on my cat and I had to pull it off real quick. Obviously with some like tweezers. Not tweezers, I got a tick removal deal. But man, this is all kind of fucked. If this is true, they pulled some fucking scummy tactics. And I really wish I could say it would be make this quicker in court, but I don't think it will be. Because it's, from the sound of it, like they're going to fight this tooth and nail. So this means they are going to drag it out and try to win or reach a settlement.
This is the bank's lien that would,
unless they are positive they're going to lose, I doubt they're going to settle on their side. Yeah, but I doubt like the other side's going to settle, period. So the odds are they're going to lose. Like, I think TFE, like that company, like they're going to lose this lawsuit and they're going to have to pay out an ass ton of money. I don't know if it would be like bankruptcy bad, but I would assume probably, because they got to pay out a lot of people for a lot of wages that they owe them, and some of the other shit I forgot they owe money to people.
Was secured in 2020
like
and
the bank.
Expired in December of 2025, which, as you'll notice, is a very coincidental, you might say, time frame, right? If the secured lien, if that needs to be paid in December of 2025 and the company's being rolled up in December of 2025 and everybody at the company knows that the bank is owed these millions of dollars, this is what the lawsuit is claiming, that they were doing so without notifying the bank and to take the money from the bank, which would be fucking insane. But obviously that's what the lawsuit's saying, and we'll see what the exhibits say or show, if they do show any of this as we get down there. This was all done with the goal of leaving unpaid debts and existing shareholders with Intrepid while continuing to develop, sell, or profit from Ashes of Creation through the new
scummy methods. They're trying to take the bag and run.
TFE Game Holdings entity. When plaintiff objected to the foreclosure and alerted a senior secured creditor to defend its scheme, defendants realized their plan had unraveled and they abruptly and wrongfully terminated nearly Intrepid's entire workforce. So basically, this just says Stephen told the bank. Stephen went to the bank because they were a secured creditor that was owed the money and said they're trying to close the company. They're trying to roll up the company without, paying you the money that you're owed as this secured creditor. And then the bank, obviously, as we know now, contacted Valve and said, don't give them the money because, that's my money. This is pretty much already confirmed, but now he's also in plain text.
So Steven went and snitched on him, which I do not blame him for a second. I would do it too. This is a lot of fucked up shit, if y'all ask me. They, seen the ship sinking. Now, they were trying to get that money, and they're saying, oh, we're trying to pay the employees. I'm going to be real with y'all. I don't think they're going to pay the employees. What I think they're going to do was take that money and try to run. But now the bank got that money on hold. And they're trying to say, oh, it's their money to Valve. But Valve's like, no, actually, it's the customer's money. Your money lies with the company. That's a different side, though. Different deal that they're going to have to worry about. Which I don't know if that'll be addressed in this video or not.
In a lawsuit.
Holy shit, it's 54 minutes long. Fuck! Ads!
Now tax.
Sorry, I'm not watching ads.
Defendants' actions signified to the public a complete collapse of Intrepid, and they triggered severe and intense public scrutiny regarding the apparent failure of the game, which obviously has been also talked about by Jason, is that because the loan was against Stephen's house that he was owed money from this. So that's what that claim is, and this is the other claim, and hopefully there's some evidence in here to show which one of those is correct, or maybe both are true. Who fucking knows? Defendants' actions signify to the public a complete collapse of Intrepid, and they triggered a severe and intense public scrutiny regarding the apparent failure of the game, the treatment of the employees, and plaintiff's perceived role in both. Defendants intentionally set up Stephen as the plaintiff as the scapegoat to face the backlash alone, including by intentionally filing a false corporate disclosure listing plaintiff as the sole board member, and plaintiff's husband John Morris.
See, I had mentioned some a couple videos ago where they're going to have a fall guy, and it seems like what he's saying. I think it's him saying it. They're trying to use Steven as the fall guy to take all the blame, when in reality it's not Steven to actually blame.
Chief Financial Officer, even though Ogden was the duly appointed Chief Financial Officer, and all of the board defendants were board members. So I've talked about this in a previous video. You can look this up. This is public filing. You can just look this up yourself. Ryan Ogden was appointed as CFO. He was serving as CFO in the documents that were filed to the California local government. And he was there for like half a year. And then randomly, he filed an amended document that listed John Moore as CFO. And this is obviously alleging that John Moore wasn't the CFO at that time. And he just did this, for reasons. Who knows what those reasons are, but the lawsuit is claiming that this was to conceal identities of the board of directors and insulate them from public fallout. Since destroying Intrepid, defendants have been actively soliciting buyers for Ashes of Creation, so obviously we knew that they were trying to develop the game using overseas labor until the plan fell apart, but now apparently, according to this, the allegation is that they're trying to just sell the game, which is inclusive of Ashes of Creation, of Intrepid's intellectual property and trade.
They're changing their wording. They're trying to change the narrative, but it's fucking horseshit.
Secrets in an attempt to salvage their own financial exposure. They've also been publicly defaming plaintiff to the gaming community, which I assume is referring to Jason's release of text messages from 20.
He could probably get him on a defamation lawsuit.
2015
to
2021, and also Jason saying a bunch of stuff about Stephen. I assume that's what he means by publicly defaming. Defendant's conduct has harmed the company and the plaintiff, and poses continuing.
They have also been publicly defaming plaintiff to the gaming community. Yeah, that's true. Even I believed him at first until I started watching this guy. He gives a bit more detail, and he makes a bit more sense.
Imminent and existential threat to the company. The company is basically fucked at this point, obviously. Through this action, plaintiff, both individually and on behalf of Intrepid, seeks damages based on defendant's efforts to sabotage Intrepid in its work on one of the most ambitious gaming projects ever developed. It's always funny when you read lawsuits because there's always stuff like this where they're like, oh, this is the best thing ever. This is innovation. This is
The most ambitious. I get really tired of hearing that shit. Like when a game's coming out, it's like, oh, this is the most ambitious. This is the most ambitious. I'm like, oh, you know something? I heard that last time. And I heard it the time before that. I don't give a shit how ambitious it is. Make a good fucking game.
this is crazy. And it's just talking about making a video game. Plaintiff
Make a good game and people will show up. Make a shit game and nobody's gonna show up. Isn't like Vanguard or Veilguard or something like that? That new free-to-play game. I think it was Veilguard. I'm scared to pull up my Steam. You'll see a lot of things. No, I'm kidding. I am, but I'm not. Okay, I'm gonna look it up real quick. I think it's Veilguard, wasn't it? What's Veilguard? What was it? It's a free to. Okay, I'm just like I'm not gonna. Maybe I'm dyslexic. Too much dyslexic, and I can't spell worth the shit. But it's like a 3v3, I think it was, or like, yeah, I think it's like a 3v3 hero shoot or some shit like that. And I took one look at it, and I'm like, this looks like shit. The character designs are boring. The gameplay looks boring. And I'm like, I watched people play it, and they had like long periods of time where like nothing was happening. I'm like, why? I'm like, people have a short attention span already. Why would they play this game? If they want to sit there and do nothing for a bit, like have like a peaceful time, I'd go play like a more peaceful game like Hytale or something like that.
also seeks injunctive and equitable relief to remedy harm to Intrepid and derivative plaintiffs from defendants' continued efforts to then destroy the company in pursuit of their own greed. Then obviously argues why it's in this jurisdiction and venue. It's in this jurisdiction and venue because it's in California. This all happened in California. And then it goes over the parties. So Robert Dawson is the first one named, and he's named as the first one because he's Intrepid's chairman of the board since September of 2024. And also has been the majority shareholder since July of 2024, which is when basically he took control of the company. So from this, Robert Dawson has had majority control of the company since July of 2024. He's also a junior secured lender to Intrepid. He resides in Florida, blah, blah, blah. He is alleged to be the one conceiving and executing the wrongful foreclosure strategy described herein, and through his post-closure efforts to solicit buyers and employees in California to exploit the company's intellectual property and trade secrets. Then it goes over Ryan Ogden. Ryan Ogden also been the CFO since September 2024, board member on or around August of 2024, lives in Florida, and same allegations, but that he also voted to approve, ratify, and participate in wrongful foreclosure strategy, personally participate in and directed the preparation of foreclosure assets list, attempted to divert company revenues, and by submitting false regulatory filings in California to give rise to some of the claims within. Teresa, she also is alleged to have been part of the same things that the board's being claimed. I think we can skip over most of this, to be honest. Aaron
Sounds like a bunch of suits trying to pull shady tactics.
Bartels, same thing. And then defendant TFE Game Holdings, it just describes what the company is and why they're named in the lawsuit. And obviously it's because they're the ones, that's the company entity that's allegedly trying to take control of the company and all of his assets, which this lawsuit's saying that they're not allowed to do. So here we go, the general allegations. Let's get into the real meat. Sharif, this just explains who Steven is. Lifelong gamer, MMORPG fan, sought to create a video game, blah, blah, blah. In 2015, co-founded Intrepid alongside husband John Moore to develop MMORPG Ashes of Creation. He put his own money in, apparently, which is another thing that has been claimed he didn't. So we're going to see records of this, presumably at some point during the lawsuit. He surrounded himself with seasoned game developers, helped bring the vision to life whom he closely directed and supervised. It was a passion project. Then obviously they're claiming that it was the most anticipated MMO in 2017, 2020, 2022. God damn, it's been a
I don't think it was most anticipated because, to be frankly honest with you, until 2025, I didn't hear jack shit about Ashes of Creation. Maybe that's just me though. And also, if like he put in his own money, like if they win this lawsuit, like he wins this lawsuit, like against this like a corporation, this corporation could be facing some major payouts. I was just thinking about like employees and him and employees in the bank. I didn't even think about like if he gets them with the defamation, if what's it called Kickstarter, if he has to refund all the money from the Kickstarter and all that shit. Oh fuck! I don't know if they'll have to do that with the Kickstarter though. Be nice if they had to, but I probably won't.
Long time. Star Citizen fans in the chat. Public excitement about development was further fueled by the innovative development approach in which he fostered an open dialogue with Ashes Creation potential user base. In furtherance of this approach, he went and hosted webinars, the live streams talking about the game. There were many concrete benefits to this novel development approach. We all know, obviously, open development, they're going to talk about the fact that, with a bunch of eyeballs and a bunch of opinions, you can develop the game differently and hopefully more in line with what the community wants. Following years of this iterative diligence, early access version of the game was released to public in 2025 through Steam.
I think the key to making a good game is listening to the community and making the game built around that. Now, have a limit to how much you listen to the community for what you want to add, what you want to do. And the best example of like it being done badly is The Culling. The Culling was a fun game. It was a growing game, but they listened to the community way too much, and they just overdid it. And the changes they kept making kept fucking everything up. Because they were trying to listen to the community, they added the changes that the community wanted, and then the community didn't like it. So then you'd shave the community off. Then they'd change it again because by request of the community. Shaving a little bit off because some people didn't like it. Little by little, it just like you shaved your community away. It's like scaling like damage and shit like that. The game was good from the start. The Culling was a good game from the start. You shouldn't have changed it as much as you did. Even I still, to this day, I love the Culling. And I even bought the Culling 2, I believe it was. It was basically a PUBG ripoff. And the gunplay and all that wasn't that bad, to be honest. But it felt more like an asset flip. Also, to mention, I sat in a lobby for like an hour trying to get in a game. And I think I had a max of like 5 people in my lobby. Out of 100. That is honestly probably one of the worst performing games I've ever seen. That I've actually like gone into.
Popular gaming platform prior to...
I don't even know if the Culling still has the servers up anymore, or if they just like shut down. Because I'm pretty sure their studio shut down.
The execution of Dawson, the board's defendant's illicit plan, Ashes of Creation boasted the highly unusual day 30 player retention rate of approximately 76%. That's really good. If you're looking at video games normally, 76% after 30 days is really good. And then obviously it just goes through what are the intellectual property and trade secrets, which is all the things that make up a video game, right? The assets, the sounds, the design, the systems, etc. And then it just goes over talking about how they kept the trade secrets a secret and why they're valuable, etc.
Texas is growing.
Trade secrets
and the
are
demand
important.
for skilled workers is needed.
It's like connections, tactics, plans. You don't see... It's like KFC, like their recipe was like been a secret for so long. Although I think they went public with it, but like certain companies, like they have like their tactics, their recipes, their methods. Fuck, my headset's broken. Oh no. But you get what I mean. Ah shit, now I need a new headset again. Fuck me.
Trepid was Sharik's personal passion project. He provided early funding to the company from his personal funds. Thereafter, in 2017, the company raised approximately $3 million in Kickstarter campaign demonstrating the outset the commercial viability of intellectual property and trade secret materials, aka the video game. During this initial phase of the company, its board of directors consisted of Sharif, John Moore, and Thomas Alkazin. The company's sole shareholders were John Moore and Thomas Alkazin. Starting in 2017, the company began acquiring debt financing, much Sharif and Moore personally guaranteed. In 2020, the company acquired a $6 million loan from Commerce West Bank pursuant to the Federal Reserve's Main Street Lending Program. Okay, so the Federal Reserve Main Street Lending Program is a federally backed loan, which means it's the US federal government giving this loan. And if you look up the Federal Reserve's Main Street Lending Program, this was a COVID era loan that had a maturity term of 5 years. It was personally guaranteed by Moore, collateralized by all the company's assets, including specifically its intellectual property, which includes the trade secret materials. A year later, in 2021, one of the company's existing lenders introduced Sharif and the company to claimed billionaire Robert Dawson as a potential lender. So obviously what we saw from Jason's texts was a bunch of texts between Jason and Steven where the company was just in absolute fucking turmoil, and Steven was constantly begging for money to pay payroll and to do things like go to events and things of that nature from 2017-ish till 2021. And then the texts stop from what Jason released himself, which was a question mark for me. Why did the text stop there specifically? Because obviously 2021 to 2026, there's got to have been a lot of shit that happened. Obviously, we know that Jason filed a lawsuit against Intrepid years later in like 2024, something like that, I believe. But at the end of the text messages that Jason released between him and Steven, we saw that they were back on good terms and it was a cordial business relationship where they were friendly with each other. But then as those text messages stop, here we see that that's when Jason introduced Robert Dawson, which is somebody you can Google. Robert Dawson and Jason Karamanis and Ryan Ogden. These people have all been in companies together, multi-level marketing companies, obviously. And then obviously from 2021 to 2025, Dawson
Sometimes, man, you just can't trust a suit.
continuously extended debt to the company. Dawson was originally cooperative and supportive of Sharif and his vision, and he held himself out as a confidant for Sharif. Dawson came up in the multi-level marketing space, and he was not a gamer. When it became clear the project was not going to turn as quick of a profit as he hoped, his behavior towards Sharif changed dramatically starting in 2023. Dawson's campaign of control and coercion. Okay, that's a title. That's a fucking header. In late 2022 and early 2023, a major video game developer expressed interest in acquiring Intrepid for hundreds of millions of dollars. People didn't know about this before. This is a thing. There was a big offer on the table to buy Intrepid and to continue development of Ashes. Dawson urged Sharif to reject the proposed deal in favor of continuing to develop Intrepid from the ground up under his financing. So the allegation here is that Dawson was saying, don't accept the big money deal to sell the game for a whole bunch of money, even though at this time Steven was the only person who owned the company. Well, Steven, John, and that other guy that was just listed, Thomas Alkazin. So they were the only people that owned shares, and according to this, the other people, including Dawson, just owned debt. But what's being said here is that Dawson convinced Steven to reject the big money deal to sell the game, and that he would continue financing the game. Sharif heeded the advice, rejected the acquisition bid, and acquisition discussions ended in early 2023. The acquisition offer, however, was the turning point in Sharif and Dawson's relationship. Dawson saw that the company had very real potential for providing extremely high returns, and Dawson began a ruthless campaign for control of the company in order to realize those returns as quickly as possible, without consideration for the quality of the game and the typical development timeline of MMORPGs. So basically what the allegation here is that they saw like a big mega money deal come in, like, oh, this thing we invested in, we weren't super sure it was going to be worth tons of money, but then this deal makes it look like it will be worth tons of money. Don't accept that deal. Instead, we'll finance the game, we'll get it to the release, and then it'll be worth more money, presumably. Right? This is what this is saying. And then the allegation is that as soon as they saw the company was going to be worth a bunch of money, they decided to start pressuring to get control of the company in its entirety so that they would be the sole beneficiaries of.
I don't doubt that for a second. Once they see big dollar signs, man, you can see the dollar signs in their own eyes. It's the fucking shit, man. Like, it's greed. It's greed and overreaching. It's like, well, it's like, yes, I'm a shareholder. Like, I'll get a lot of money, but if I get complete control, I can get the majority of the money, or I get a lot more money if I get complete control. So how do I get complete control? And then that's when they start scheming and planning and shit like that to take complete control. It's completely fucked, man. But it's fucking business. At least it is nowadays.
Potentially this big payday that they'd been substantiated from like a big, a big
Fuck,
deal
I'm
that had
getting
been
hungry.
offered, according to the allegations. From early 2023 through May 2024, Dawson repeatedly held Sharif and the then board hostage by threatening to withhold financing for employee payroll and health insurance funding days before payroll deadlines, to shut down the company through litigation, and to cause Sharif financial ruin and physical harm. If we see evidence of this, this is a fucking crazy thing, right? If we see evidence that this board was saying, oh, do this, or we're not going to put money into the account to pay the employees, or we're going to
That would be... Wouldn't that be criminal charges for withholding employee funds? Like, purposely?
physically harm you, that's crazy.
Fraud,
So maybe it's in the exhibits, or maybe it's going to come out if it's true in Discovery. That's fucking nuts, right? This turns it into like a fucking Netflix documentary and not just like a video game development that went wrong. So unless Sharif signed documents granting Dawson greater and greater amounts of equity and control, this is what he is being alleged that was being said. We'll harm you unless you give us more equity and control. We'll not pay the employees. We'll sue you. We'll do X, Y, and Z unless you give us more control of the company. And here's a specific example, which would be crazy to put in a lawsuit if you don't have evidence of this. But obviously, we're not going to see the evidence, I don't think, at least until Discovery. In just one example, Dawson demanded a warrant granting him 10% of the company for $10. Yeah, okay. In other instances, Dawson demanded
10% for $10? That is like greed beyond what I have ever heard of. I've never like seen greed like that. That shit's fucking crazy, man. Bit frustrating too, to be frankly honest with you.
zero-cost, non-dilutable equity options in his convertible debt notes. Sharif and the then board acquiesced to Dawson's demands because they believed Dawson would make good on his threats and that refusing would result in imminent catastrophe for the employees and the company. Dawson also required Sharif to involve him in all discussions with company counsel, despite his outsider status, and even falsely represented that he was an agent of the company to retain company counsel. I might be wrong here, but what this means is that he was basically saying you can't talk to a lawyer unless I'm there, and I will also be saying I represent the company while you're talking to a lawyer. As a result of the direct, intentional, and mounting pressure, plaintiff suffered an extreme health crisis, including a hypertensive emergency and acute kidney failure, hospitalization, and vision loss from blood pressure complications, including macular edema. Don't know what that is, but the claim here is that due to all of this that was going on, Stephen was hospitalized with kidney failure.
Probably for stress.
Hypertension that caused him to lose his partial vision. Plaintiff suffers long-term impairment from his health issues he experienced during this period. Dawson was privy to plaintiff's health issues at the time, and he's well aware of the long-term impacts plaintiff suffered. Now, we're at the fucking Stephen files section here, where there's a bunch of redacted stuff. This is court sealed. We're not going to see this. Presumably, this is some private, confidential agreement.
It will probably become public in the future if it is deemed really important.
Between the two parties being Stephen and this board, which is Dawson,
but it's private for now.
Bartels, Teresa, Ryan Ogden, etc. Dawson also insisted on revising the company's corporate governance documents and shareholder agreements. On May 16, 2024, company shareholders entered into the shareholders agreement. Under the shareholder agreement, plaintiff expressly retained full creative control of the company. So they're saying that even under this agreement, Stephen Sharif maintained express full creative control of the company, but that he didn't own the company. So he was in charge of the creative direction, and Dawson and other people were in charge of
That is bullshit, and they know it. If they owned, if he was just had creative freedom, and they owned the company, if he did one thing they didn't like, he would be out, or they would tell him to change it. It's fucking bullshit. It's a lie. It's like they're trying to wrap shit in honey.
They owned the company, basically, is what this is saying.
Honeyfield
After
lies.
this event that happened, this thing, which again I'm going to assume is some kind of settlement
So bad at
behind
analogies.
closed doors. Dawson gained both de jure and de facto control of the company finances and governance. He was not only the majority shareholder, also remained the primary provider of crucial debt financing. He leveraged his newly acquired power over Sharif and his team of employees by continuing to routinely threaten to withhold funds, especially just before bi-weekly payroll
That is
deadlines to extract
frustrating.
concessions. For example, based on the threat of withholding payroll funds, he forced
That actually pisses me off. It's like, oh, I'm gonna hold your employees' money if you don't do what I say. That is definitely a crime.
Moore to resign from the board and transfer his equity to Sharif. Dawson and his deputies also frequently threatened to harm Stephen and his loved one physically if Stephen did not comply with his demands.
That could be 2 strikes technically if he's threatened 2 people.
This is fucking crazy. I mean, I did say this was going to be a crazy story, and once people saw the allegations on both
These people
sides,
are unhinged.
it was going to be an absolutely fucking nuclear fallout. Because if there is evidence of this that comes up in court, my God, this is
They're
crazy.
looking at criminal
On May
charges.
13th, 2024, Dawson
it comes out.
securitized his debt against all assets and all personal property of the company, including intellectual property, which includes the trade secret materials, aka basically the game. Dawson lien financing statement attached here to is Exhibit B. We'll go over that at the end, I guess. Lenders that hold senior priority positions to Dawson are the Small Business Administration and Commerce West Bank, whose loan is also collateralized by all assets and personal property of the company, including intellectual property, which includes trade secret materials. And that is also attached to this, so we can go over it to see who actually is the person who, on paper, is owed the money. Right? If you're going to roll up the company, you have to pay out the people who are owed stuff from within the company need to
So
be
this is gonna
privy
be
to and
okay.
involved in this process because they're owed stuff. You can't just say, oh, I'm owed and jump the queue and just take everything, which is what this is alleging they tried to do. Dawson knew or should have known of these senior liens because they are publicly available. I mean, yeah, you can literally look this up in 5 minutes yourself. As majority shareholder, Dawson voted himself and his close business associate Ryan Ogden onto the board of directors during a September 4th, 2024 board meeting. The board appointed
shit.
Dawson as chairman of the board and Ogden as CFO. Dawson directed Ogden to open new bank accounts for Intrepid at Pathway Bank, which is a bank over which Dawson exercises de facto and de jure control. So he controls the bank and he got Ryan Ogden to open new accounts.
That is bad. And very suspicious. That's what they fucking do when they fucking trying to scam people.
Accounts at the bank he controls. Sharif ceased to have any access to active company bank accounts, and he was effectively stripped of financial and other authority. So obviously in the lawsuit that was filed by TFE Holdings, which is owned by
They try to do a
Sorry,
hostile
Dawson.
takeover pretty much.
which is this person, they're claiming in that lawsuit that they didn't have control of the finances and didn't have access to the books, and Stephen was in charge of everything. And then Stephen is claiming that since September 4th of 2024,
Well, somebody's telling the truth and
they
somebody's
had control
lying.
of everything and even had new bank accounts and everything that they were controlling. And obviously Jason has also claimed publicly that they didn't have access to stuff, but this is saying that they did. So again, we're going to have to wait and see document-wise who's correct on this one, because both sides are saying a completely polar opposite thing to each other. By August 2025, Dawson elected his close associates Teresa and a substantial company creditor and Aaron Bartels to the board. Thus, from that time until Sharif's January 19, 2026 resignation from the company, the board consisted of Dawson, Ogden, Fett, Bartels, and Sharif. All these people acted at the behest of Dawson rather than as independent board members, and they continually voted in alignment with him. Dawson frequently insisted that Sharif not publicize Dawson's role within the company. So this is saying people's biggest criticism and complaint of this whole situation is Stephen always said the company was only financed by him. He was the only person involved. There was no, corporate overlords or whatever. And obviously the text messages from Jason show that even from the very beginning, there was other people putting money into the company. But then people have also said, reasonably so, why, when a board was created and these other people gained control of the company, did you not let people know that this was the case? Because that would have informed people's purchasing decisions. And this is where a lot of the...
Because both parties still want money. They still want one person, at least one of the people wanted to see the game still come out, I would say. It's fucked because the guy, it sounds like Dawson got people who he wanted on the board. Enough, the majority of people that he wanted on the board on his side, that's purely on his side, so whatever he wanted was going to be approved. No matter what, like, the original creator wanted, which is kind of fucked.
Allegations of, oh, it's a scam came from. And what this lawsuit is saying, at least on the face of it, is that Dawson was the one who now owned the company that was saying, do not talk about my role within the company. Ogden, too, did not wish for his identity and role to be revealed publicly. Sharif was under no express obligation to hide Dawson or Ogden's roles and identities, but Sharif complied out of fear of reprisals, and he continued to act as the external face of the company. So that's the claim. Obviously, we're going to need to see documentation of this,
Fair.
as with fucking everything claimed in all these lawsuits.
True.
On October 15, 2025, Sharif notified the board that he would take a temporary medical leave relating to the medical issues he'd suffered in 2024. He then advised the board that he would be stepping back from his role as CEO and board member, but that he would continue as he was able as creative director. Intrepid partners with Valve. Okay, so this is the Valve section and how this all plays out. So in around September 25, the board, against Stephen Sharif and senior leadership's advice, directed that Intrepid undertake an early access launch of Ashes of Creation in Okay, so when I saw the announcement of the game is coming to Steam, my immediate reaction, obviously I'd been aware at the time before the public announcement, because I'd been contacted by somebody with internal knowledge to the company and informed right when the employees were informed that this game was going to Steam. My immediate reaction was, there's something massive going on behind the scenes. Either there's no money or somebody's exerting control to get this game pushed out into the public to begin making money with the game, to reduce operating costs, to do whatever. It's a financially motivated decision. This was blatantly obvious from, if you know anything about the company, and optically it looks bad. You can spin it whatever way you want, but if a game is saying we have loads of money, it's fine, don't worry about it, and then the game goes to then say, oh, we're launching in early access on Steam, there's only one factor for doing that, and it's financially driven. What this is saying is that the board forced this decision against the judgment of all the people involved, such as Stephen. The early access launched on December 2011, 2025. Steam is a worldwide platform. We know what Steam is. We don't have to. Ogden specifically assured Commerce West Bank that the revenue owing to the company from Valve under the revenue share agreement related to the Steam early access launch would cover outstanding obligations of the Commerce West Bank loan. Okay, so this is...
T Fairway here. How can I help?
I am playing the worst I ever have. I want to buy the same clubs my buddy has so I can keep up.
For context, if you're following along with this still, obviously this is going to be a long one, right? We're a third of the way through this document. It'll speed up a little bit. So obviously the public narrative right now, because of what Jason Karamanis has said on live streams, etc., which has then been repeated by a bunch of mainstream game outlets and things like that, is that Stephen went to the bank without the board's knowledge and did this as some kind of ploy to unlock equity in his house or something, right?
I don't believe that.
This is
really.
alleging that Ogden specifically spoke to the bank and said the money that's coming in from the Steam sales from the bank will be covering our obligation to you, which was millions of dollars of a bank loan that everybody in the company knew was pending, right? Everybody knew this needed to be paid in December of 2025 because it had been there since 2020 and these people had been involved in the company for years by the point of 2025. So if true, this is obviously a very easily provable point, right? There's going to be communications between Ogden and the bank that will be able to come up in discovery. So we'll see on that one, I guess. But this is a very specific claim. This is a very specific point that would be easy for either side to prove one way or another.
This is a very long video. I gotta say. Hey, you're really going into this. Like, top to bottom.
Right? Dawson, TFE, and the board execute a wrongful foreclosure in an effort to steal the company's intellectual property and trade secrets. Beginning in 2025, the board collectively devised a plan and an agreement to take possession of the company's assets via a wrongful Article 9 foreclosure process using Dawson's junior secured lien against the company. They intentionally planned to do so without providing proper and legally required notice to senior secured lenders so that they could transfer company assets to a new company created and controlled by Dawson, TFE, and wipe out equity holders and prior creditors in Intrepid. Again, a lot of people had liens against Intrepid. And what they...
You know what would have happened if they were successful and no one had noticed in time? They'd have had the money, a lot of money, made a whole bunch of money, probably got sued, probably would have lost the lawsuit, had to pay back the money they owed, but at the end of the day, they only had to pay back the money they owed, and that they'd probably still end with a profit. Years wasted, years of people's life wasted in a lawsuit that was stupid as hell. That's how this shit fucking goes. I seen a deal about Tyson doing causing inflation the other day, and that they lost a lawsuit. They had to pay what was it, like $80 million, but it's like they lost $80 million, but the market was like inflation was like. For pork, and it was like something like, what was it, like 20 billion? And I'm like, so they made a record-breaking profit, really. I'm like, I'm not saying they made 20 billion. I'm saying the market, they definitely made more than $80 million. And like they lost it during the lawsuit that they were having, and before it, because of like causing the inflation. Unrelated topic though. Yeah, I can't remember why I went into it now. Oh well, continuing.
He's claiming is that they came in and just said, oh, never mind, we're just going to take control of everything, and all these other creditors, we're going to jump ahead of them and just take the stuff, which is a wild claim to make. Then it says, of course, they believe that all the board members are likely members of TFE, which is the new company. The board defendants also intended to lay off a large portion of the Intrepid workforce without required wages, PTO, and severance, because those debts would remain with Intrepid. So the allegation is they were going to saddle all of the debt on Intrepid as an entity and then just move all the stuff that's worth money to a new entity and continue operating without having to pay back all this stuff that was owed, while bringing a portion of the employee base over to TFE to finish development of the Ashes Creation project in order to monetize it for their own personal benefit. All the employees have seen this communication. So this part is verifiably true. Dawson had indicated that he was considering executing this strategy to obtain greater control over the development project as early as 2024. Beginning in 2025 and in furtherance of their scheme, the board defendants intentionally permitted the company to accrue substantial unpaid obligation to the vendors and service providers with the goal of using the debt to improperly declare a default and justify an Article 9 foreclosure on Jason's junior secured lien. So what they're saying, they stopped paying vendors, which obviously we've seen multiple lawsuits from vendors, right? We saw the lawsuit, I believe it was Google Web Services or something, right? There was a lawsuit from SADA Systems, which is a Google cloud partner, suing Intrepid for $850,000 plus of unpaid
shit. That's a lot of money.
Fees, basically, for the services rendered to Intrepid. So this is saying that in 2025 they started intentionally not paying vendors in order to justify closing the company and taking control of the assets of the company into a new company, which is again absolutely fucking nuts accusation to make, and a very specific one. Prior to the wrongful foreclosure and in furtherance of their underhanded plan, Dawson directed Ogden as CFO to open bank accounts at Pathway Bank for TFE, the new company Dawson had created to house the wrongfully foreclosed upon assets. Prior to the wrongful foreclosure and to further justify declaration of default, Ogden wrongfully directed Valve to divert the deposit funds owed to the company under the partnership with Steam to a new Pathway bank account. Holy shit. Plaintiff first objected to the board defendants' plan during a December 15th,
I fucking hit a button.
In-person board meeting.
Fuck, where was I? Don't tell me I skipped that far ahead.
For TFE, the new company Dawson had created housed the wrongfully foreclosed upon assets. Prior to the wrongful foreclosure and to further justify declaration of default, Ogden wrongfully directed Valve to divert the deposit funds owed to the company under the partnership with Steam to a new Pathway bank account for TFE. Valve did not comply. Good. Jesus Christ, this is such a fucking mess. Holy shit. Plaintiff first objected to the board defendant's plan during a December 15th, 2025 in-person board
fucking
meeting.
hell, man.
So this is saying Stephen was in a board meeting and said, no. Specifically objected to the board causing the company to not pay vendors, to the board's plan to lay off a large portion of employees without requisite pay and benefits, and to the legality of the foreclosure. After the meeting ended and all the board members had left, Dawson confronted Stephen in a physically intimidating manner and told him he, quote, didn't want any shit, and coerced him to sign between 30 and 40 signature pages to the corresponding agreements for which plaintiff was not permitted to review.
No. Don't sign
This
that
is honestly
bullshit.
like some mafia shit. Like, if this is true, this is fucking...
It's business. I don't doubt it could be true because it's fucking greed, man. They want more money. They don't want just what they have. They're not satisfied with their 12 yachts, man. They want to have 50 yachts. And all yachts have like a Lamborghini in them. Or some other expensive ass bullshit. I'm like, why stop at 50 even? When I get more money and I can up it to 60, 100. More money. That's what captures them, entices them. More money. It's fucking greed. It's really fucking shitty.
Crazy. Plaintiff next objected to the board defendants.
There used to be pride in like rewarding people like loyal workers and treating the customer right. God, I wish those days were still here.
Plan to foreclose without notice to the senior secured lenders on a phone call with Dawson and Dawson's personal counsel that occurred between December 28th, 2025 and January 3rd, 2026. So right at the end, just almost not even a full month before the actual fucking implosion of the company.
Whoa.
I
What's
fucking
that? I just put the
will
button
not
app
get
in base
YouTube
44.
Premium.
Guys, Nina just
On December 30th, 2025, in furtherance of the foreclosure scheme, Ogden, at the direction of and in concert with the other board defendants, filed a false California state information document with California Secretary of State in order to conceal the board defendants' identities from the public during the planned foreclosure and attempted revenue diversion scheme. So you can see this. You can look this up. I pointed this out like 10, 15 days ago, right? If you go to the California UCC website and you look up the company information documents, you can see that at one point Stephen Sharif was listed as CEO and John Moore was listed as CFO, and then John Moore was changed to Ryan Ogden as CFO, and then on December 30th Ryan Ogden resubmitted, and he even signed submitting saying this is me putting the document forward that John Moore was back as CFO. But this document's claiming that John was taken off the board forcefully by Dawson and that he was forced to sign over his shares to Sharif and was no longer the CFO. So this is accusations of filing a knowingly false California State of Information document with California Secretary of State to conceal the identities from the public during the time where they are also alleging that the company was being, wrongfully rolled up with all this debt being saddled onto Intrepid to make this new company, which they're claiming is a revenue diversion scheme. The statement of information listed plaintiff as the sole director of the company, intentionally omitting Dawson, Ogden, Fett, and Bartels. Because if you go on that document, it literally says all board members have to be on this document. But then it's obviously filed, and at this point, there is a board, and they're not put on there, right? So this is what it's saying, and you can see these documents yourself. It further misidentified the company's CFO as Moore, despite the fact Ogden had been duly appointed CFO since September 2024. Again, this is a really easy point to prove or disprove. If you just have company minutes, which how board meetings work is everyone's in a room and you have to say, oh, this person nominates this person for this position, and then other people have to agree. They have to vote on it. That's literally how board meetings work. And board meetings presumably have minutes, and then obviously presumably there will also be emails and things. So making a claim this specific with public filings also there to show it is absolutely crazy if you do not have the evidence that this happened. So presumably this is going to somebody's going to prove this or disprove it very, very easily because they'll have the minutes of the meetings. Ogden, in
It'll be
concert with the other
interesting to see.
board defendants, filed the False California Statement Act in an effort to direct any public fallout from their conduct directly to Sharif. The board defendants did so despite actual knowledge of Sharif's fragile medical condition, and also knowledge that the gaming community would likely wrongly blame and eviscerate Sharif as the only publicly identified director should Intrepid and Ash's Creation endeavor fail or be involved in controversy. I mean, he was going to be anyway, because he made claims from the very beginning that it was only him involved. So obviously, even if you then later on say, oh, here's all these other people that are involved, people are going to be
He
like,
should disclose that there are more people.
Why did this happen? Why did you make these claims originally? But obviously, this is considerably worse. If the entire time I was making videos about this originally, everyone was like, there was no board, there was no board. Clearly, there was no board. And then you find out, yes, in fact, there was a board. But we've moved past the point of that being a controversy and moved straight on to who is directly responsible for each point of this failure. And so far, all of the public information we've had has come from Rob's lawsuit and Jason's text messages from, 2015 to 2021, and that's all we've had. So this is obviously all new public information. In advance of the wrongful foreclosure and in furtherance of the board defendants' scheme to steal the company's intellectual property and trade secrets, Ogden prepared a company asset list on December 31st, 2025. That list specifically references components of Ash's Creation that comprise the company's intellectual property and trade secret materials. The list references Ash's Creation code base, game content, tech narrative sound.
You fucking cat. All right. I think he really fucked up when he didn't disclose that there was a board now. The second the board really got it in there, he should disclose that there is now a board. And, he didn't have to make a huge public announcement about it, but he could just disclose hey, yeah, there's a board now. So I'm not the only one here. There's more people. I can't disclose their names, but there are more people now. But you are going to get criticized one way or another, to be frankly honest. Just it makes it worse when you say, oh, I'm the only one here, there is no board, and then it turns out there is a board, and you lied.
Etc. Customized gameplay, audio effects, visual effects, all the special effects. It also includes a list titled from ChatGPT, of course, that includes software and game code, game engine and technical frameworks, game systems and trade secrets, and creative content and copyrighted works. Sharif embarked on a campaign to convince the board to abandon its foreclosure scheme. So what Steven said publicly was, I resigned because I couldn't agree with the board and what they were doing. And obviously this lawsuit is now alleging that what they were doing was these things that we've been going over in this lawsuit. But also one of the things that he said was that it was because he couldn't agree with what they were doing with the employees, which was to fire a bunch of people without paying them what they were owed, which has obviously been a huge point of contention because Jason's public testimony of what he's been saying is that Steven actually was saying to the board, I want equity. I want these things to personally enrich myself. And if I don't get them, I'm going to, resign and fuck up the whole company. So this is a direct contradiction to that, although not mentioning that. So maybe there's a factor here that somebody's eventually going to
they're going against each other,
some form of provable communication. But what he's saying is,
they're going against each other. So somebody's probably telling the truth and another guy's probably lying.
Is he tried to convince them to stop the foreclosure scheme in specific. At every board meeting between January 3rd and his January 19, 2026 resignation, estimated to be between 10 and 15 times, he objected to the board defendants' plan to wrongfully foreclose on Dawson's junior secured lien without notice to secured lenders, to the board defendants' attempt to divert funds from the Steam partnership to the company TFE, and to the board defendants' plan to terminate a large portion of Intrepid's employee base without compensating PTO and severance. Again, presumably this will be, if true, in the minutes. There is an exhibit mentioned here, so I wonder what that is. On January 7th, 2026, in advance of the wrongful foreclosure and in furtherance of the board defendant's scheme to steal the company's intellectual property and trade secrets, Dawson changed the secured party on his secured party financing statement from himself to TFE, which is also attached, interestingly. On January 14th, Dawson, in concert with the board of defendants, represented to investors that the company had secured the necessary capital commitments to make it to September 2026 launch. During this meeting, Dawson revealed the foreclosure scheme and his intent to wipe the investor and lender table clean. On January 15th, Sharif blew the whistle on defendants' foreclosure plan to Commerce West.
I'm pausing for a sec. Holy shit, this document is so fucking long. Alright, I got it out of me. Let's keep going.
Bank, whom defendants had intentionally failed to notify of the foreclosure. Prompted by this information, Commerce West Bank issued an event of default letter on January 18, 2026, demanding immediate and full repayment from either the company or the personal guarantor of the loan, Moore. And obviously, you can see from the
I wonder
other
who's gonna
lawsuit,
pay
right, that this is a little bit contradictory in terms of what was filed against Stephen regarding the whole Steam situation. Because in this lawsuit specifically, it states that they're claiming that Steam notified Stephen Sharif on January 18th and he didn't share it with the company. But then in this lawsuit, he's claiming that the bank actually contacted the company, which would be a crazy thing to lie about because it's a fucking bank on a federally secured loan. So this is a crazy point based on that, because they're saying here that a bank contacted the company, so they did know about the fact that this was happening, that they owed this money. On January 16th, Dawson caused Intrepid to declare default on the one hand, and he caused TFE to foreclose on the company's assets on the other hand. Dawson caused TFE to engage in a non-judicial disposition in favor instead of a private sale. Dawson, TFE, and the board defendants failed to advertise the sale in industry standard publications or platforms.
I think this is going to just be stretched out as long as possible, and until until somebody comes to a settlement, because they probably got enough money to want to try to drag it out. They try to drain the person financially and mentally to the point of just reaching a settlement that'll be less than what they want to pay, or what they wanted to get from the lawsuit.
They did not involve a broker or auctioneer and did not publish any marketing of the sale in any manner.
Right.
The intellectual property and trade secrets of an MMORPG are not customarily sold on a recognized market, but Dawson, TFE, and the board defendants pursued a self-serving private sale anyway. TFE obtained Intrepid's assets via a self-interested transaction between Dawson, who controlled Intrepid on the one hand, and Dawson, who controlled TFE on the other hand. This self-interested transaction was completed at the specific design of Dawson and the board defendants, who blessed the sale for their own personal profits. This foreclosure approximately and directly caused Intrepid harm in the form of the loss of its most valuable assets, aka the game. The only asset the company had is the game. Dawson and the board members executed their agreement over Sharif's objections and in violation of the rights of senior secured creditors and derivative plaintiffs, the bank. Dawson performed the foreclosure in an intentional clandestine manner, and he specifically ignored his counsel's advice that Dawson must provide notice to senior secured credits, including Commerce West Bank. This is fucking nuts.
Local tax experts.
Another ad.
Now you can meet with a TurboTax expert in your community.
Immediately thereafter, on January 19, 2026, Sharif resigned from the company, and as a member of the board, in his resignation letter, he specifically identified his reasons for resignation, among others, as 1, his disagreement with the board's repeated attempts to terminate employees without payment of wages and compensation legally owed to them, which is also a thing he said publicly. 2, his disagreement with the private foreclosure, given his serious concerns the approach raised regarding fiduciary duties owed to derivative plaintiffs, creditors, employees, and the company. And 3, him being subject to repeated threats, coercion, and ultimatums to execute documents and actions that he openly and consistently protested. F, Dawson and the board illegally separate Intrepid's entire workforce and leave plaintiff to suffer the fallout. This is going over the WARN Act, right? Which obviously the employees, they're the ones that have been the most fucked by this, and they've also got their own lawsuit against Intrepid for money that they are legally owed. On or about January 31st, the board defendants caused Intrepid to issue WARN Act notices without the required notice period, which is 60 days. The board defendants took this action upon learning that the Commerce West Bank had learned of the wrongful foreclosure and had contacted Valve to intercept the funds.
All right, I'm back.
Due to Intrepid from the Steam partnership, meaning the board defendants could no longer access that money to fund TFE.
It might be a little cut because I had to edit the video just a little bit because I paused in my recording, made myself a drink.
These ramp up. So the narrative so far has been that Stephen snaked the money from Valve for personal gain. But as far as I understand it, and as this is claiming, you have to notify the bank as the secured creditor that this thing was going on, that they were going to roll up the company with the Article 9 foreclosure and move assets into a new company because they're a secured creditor and it's federal money. This is a federally backed loan. So
Oh fuck.
what he's saying in this lawsuit, which again is a crazy claim to make because this, in my mind, would be immediately illegal, at least from my understanding, is that you have a responsibility to inform the bank, otherwise you're party to what you believe is a crime, right? Because if you're saying this, they're going to take the money that's owed to the bank, that the bank has said
Bank wants
we're
their
owed this
fucking money.
and he said earlier in this lawsuit that Ryan Ogden personally, as CFO, assured the bank that they would be getting the money from the Steam funds. And then he's saying that they were going to take those Steam funds, not inform the bank, and put them into the new company.
Yvonne
That's
is my
embezzlement,
little bookkeeper.
isn't it?
We're in Arknuts Enfield and we're checking Yvonne out. Respectfully, of course. I know I said
Respectfully,
bookkeeper, but
Then his position he's claiming is that he had to tell the bank, otherwise he would be party to something that he believes to have been wrongful and potentially
Probably
a
a crime.
criminal action. Because if he wouldn't have told the bank, he would have been essentially in on the fact that they were taking this money that everybody was knew was owed to the bank. That's the claim, right? This is a fucking insane thing to, one, happen, and two, to make claims of if you don't have evidence of. Like, this is an insane thing to say. And if not, the bank is going to be saying, why the fuck are you saying this in a lawsuit when this didn't happen with money that is the US government's? That's a really stupid thing to do if you don't have the evidence that this actually happened. The corporate unrest following by the mass layoffs generated significant agitation in the online gaming community. That's a real understatement. Yeah. However, Dawson and the board defendants have intentionally hidden behind the guise of anonymity. It was no error that Ogden filed a blatantly false statement of information with California Secretary of State identifying only Sharif and Moore as company directors and or officers. Rather, it was a calculated action intended to shield the board from the fallout of their actions and wrongfully place the public blame on Sharif. The fallout for Sharif has been swift and devastating. The public has wrongfully blamed Sharif for the downfall.
It really fucking sucks to be the fall guy. Because nobody believes you. Everybody believes you're guilty because that's what the company wants them to think, and that's how they painted you. You know? If you understand, you just understand.
Intrepid accused Sharif of legal wrongdoing and called Sharif a liar. Sharif has received death threats, and both Sharif and his family fear constantly for their physical safety. The board defendants specifically discussed during a January 30th, 2026 board meeting with multiple witnesses present, using this online campaign to frame Sharif for the company's collapse. They would let Sharif take the fall and emerge as White Knights in a few months with plans to revive the game beloved by millions. I mean, whether this is true, this is exactly what's happened. So if there is a meeting where this happened and there is witnesses that are going to go on record that this happened, the fallout is exactly what this states. So again, another crazy thing to claim if you don't have evidence of it. But this is exactly what's happened. Everyone does believe these things, and everyone does believe the board is like in the right. To the same end, the board defendants have piled onto this false narrative by making false allegations that Sharif misled creditors and invested as the game development milestone and completion dates. That Sharif misrepresented the nature of his relationship with
Sharif, I don't believe misled anything. I believe that this shit is just fucked. The board tried to fuck him over. It didn't go as like they wanted. Because he saw what they're doing and he kind of pulled the plug on it. And now that he's launched, everyone's launching a suit against them. They're trying to launch a suit against him to make him look worse.
business partners and plaintiff and more misappropriated company funds. This is what has been claimed by both Jason and the TFE lawsuit. On information and belief, the board of defendants have taken the further step of distributing defamatory materials, including false statements of criminal wrongdoing about Sharif to members of the gaming public for public dissemination. At all times, Sharif appropriately caveated to potential lenders that any estimated timeframes with respect to Ash's development milestones of completion were just estimates, subject to a number of variables outside of his control. Game development is an iterative process. At all times, Sharif appropriately caveated that relationships could increase the value of the game, e.g. publishing deals were speculative and not guaranteed. At no time did Sharif intentionally misappropriate funds from the company. Public statements to the contrary are intended to invoke public outrage and outcry against Sharif to shield the defendants from the fallout of their wrongful actions described herein. So here we go. Valve freezes revenues. My God,
Oh,
we're
yeah.
halfway through this. Oh my God, this video is going to be hours long. It's
Oh,
already an hour.
see, he's only. He's like. It's a 54 minutes long, but he's got 49 minutes, so he doesn't got much longer. I'm glad Steam put a hold on this shit, because if they hadn't, this would have been a whole deal of clusterfuck. Because then Steam more likely would have pursued them as well for the money.
On February 3rd, 2026, Valve terminated Intrepid's partnership with Steam. So this is news, right? We knew they'd removed the buy button from the game. We didn't know that they'd terminated any kind of partnership. Valve cited as reasons for the termination that it received multiple conflicting requests from alleged account administrators for Intrepid, requesting authority to change Intrepid's banking information without response to Valve's follow-up requests seeking to confirm the validity of the requests. The Valve has received demands from multiple potential creditors for Intrepid's revenues, and that Valve is receiving a large number of refund requests from players who purchased the early access to the game. So basically, everybody was saying, we're owed this money, transfer this money here, the game's a fraud, the game's a scam, give us our money back from the player base. And Valve turned around and went, what the fuck is going on here? And just froze everything so that
they just turn around like, it's like that meme where like everything's on fire, the community hates the developers, and like the fucking developers are trying to take the money and run, and then the board's over here like, fuck you all.
they could figure out who is actually owed the money. Are they going to have to refund everybody? You know, what is actually going on, which we knew happened, but obviously not all the details of this. Before the issue of refunds, Intrepid would have been entitled to approximately $5 million, thus demonstrating the value of, among other things, the trade secret materials, aka the video game. Defendants continued to plan to imminently steal the company's intellectual property and trade secrets. TFE and the board defendants are currently actively soliciting former employees and the director of IT, the former director of IT, including with offers of compensation, to provide them access to Ashes of Creation along with its intellectual property and trade secret material components. And two, attempting to sell Ashes of Creation along with its intellectual property and trade secret material components, the lifeblood of the company, and key to the value of shares owned by Sharif and the derivative shareholders, to competitor game developers in order to recoup their own investments. So this, according to the allegations, is the new plan, is to just sell the game, get access to the game from the employees who they fired and didn't pay, so that they can sell the game to somebody.
That's
the defendants' actions
scummy.
are in furtherance of the agreement. Between the board members.
And they sell the game, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna sell the game to the employees." No, the fuck they're not. They're gonna sell the game. They're gonna take the bag, and then they're gonna run.
To appropriate the company's intellectual property and trade secrets. Defendants' actions have already harmed the company, and they continue to pose irreparable and imminent harm to the company. And then there's all the claims for relief, right? I'm not going to go and read these because this is just saying what they want. Now we can go through the exhibits. It's actually not going to be as long as I thought it was going to be, because we're basically
exhibits,
at the end.
huh?
Okay, so now we have the public records that we could already look up ourselves. So this is Ryan Ogden. This is Robert Dawson's lien against the company, which is filed on the 13th of the 5th, 2024. And then this is the bank's lien, which is in 2020, right? 7/26/2020, which is showing who is owed the money. This is the Small Business Administration loan. This is then the federally backed loan, the Commerce West Bank loan that's for millions of dollars. They're claiming that they tried to circumvent. Then
this part, I'm going to skip this part. This shit is all kinds of fucked. I'm going to be real with y'all. I see a long legal battle in their future. It's very, very unfortunate, because I'd really like to had seen the game come out. But, oh look, he's got a pinned comment. Obviously, it should go without saying that everything so far in all lawsuits is devoid, of publicity, publicity, available evidence to corroborate anyone's side of the story. So basically, it's just, all this is like statements just to like appease their side of the story, to make them look good. But I'm saying one side's telling the truth, probably, and the other side's not. As are most claims, being made without supporting documentation. We get more information and perspective as each week passes, but ultimately we will be unable to determine the truth of this matter until documents become available. Crazy, well, there's a lot. Crazy claims on both sides, and discovery is going to be absolutely insane. Ashes may never release, but at least you'll get years of Kickstarter MMO legal shenanigans. It's kind of funny. Kind of sucked, but it's kind of funny. Well, again, this guy's link to this video will be down in the description below. If you would like to give me any feedback or like things I should do better for like reaction videos, please do leave a comment down below and let me know what I should like try to do better. If my audio is too loud, let me know as well.
This is
Okay, I'll make sure my desktop audio is actually playing this entire time, because if I was recording this entire time and that desktop audio was not playing, I might have cried. But yeah, I'm not sure what I'm gonna react to next, because I'm pretty sure for the time being this is gonna be the end of this kind of content for him. So might go do some reaction videos to Asmongold next. If you got some recommendations, you can also recommend me some videos down for me to react to down in the comments below. I'd appreciate it, and I'll catch y'all next time.